Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, in this business of show, there are so many elements in play that are required to just make something be absolutely fantastic and come together in sort of the miracle of that it takes for, to make any kind of film or television. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you must be in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals, and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. And, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are listening, keep listening. But also hit that subscribe button. Give us the old 5-star rating. Turn on your notifications bell on all your podcast providers of choice. We're available everywhere, places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, so don't hesitate to subscribe. We're easy to find. And plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, the other things that I can't even think of. Social media confuses me, but it's what we do. It's part of the job. We're at In the Seats, and find us there for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it even more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that kindness and pay us a visit. On this episode, boys and girls, we're diving into a little bit of, science fiction, which we love so very, very dearly. It's the show Constellation, which is available on Apple TV Plus now, and I mean, it's a real, it's a mind bender, it's a twister, it's a good one. It's the story of Jo, played by Noomi Rapace, who returns to Earth after a disaster in space and discovers that there's parts of her life that are kind of missing. So she sets out to expose the truth about the hidden secrets of space travel and kind of recover what she's lost. It's really a fantastic and really engaging piece of sci-fi, which I absolutely love. If you have Apple TV Plus, go check it out. Or if you don't have Apple TV Plus, go sign up for Apple TV Plus, because it is probably one of the better streaming services out there, sort of show for show. There's not a lot of waste. It's just a lot of quality. Go sign up for Apple TV Plus now. But before you do that, you should listen to this next interview, because we had the unique pleasure of sitting down with two fantastic artists who do the music for the show. The one only Ben Salisbury and Suvi-Eeva Äikäs. I apologize if I mispronounced that. But it's really atmospheric, sort of moody sci-fi music, and it really adds to the show. And we had I had real pleasure of sitting down with them to sort of dive into, the minutiae of, making music for a show like this, and sort of the back and forth that has to go on, and sort of what parts they get involved in, and just, I guess, the creative process they're in. Because, it's interesting, especially with composers, because, sometimes they're on for minute one, sometimes, they get a finished picture and they have to do music. It's really an interesting, it's one of those creative jobs where they could kind of jump in anywhere and still do the work. But, I definitely think it's better off the earlier they get involved. And, if they were pretty involved, pretty involved early on this one. But it's a great show. And with the Emmy voting period coming up, I hope people vote for it. Because, again, there's so many fantastic workers behind a show like this that just make it what it is. But, like I said, go check out Constellation on Apple TV Plus. But first, enjoy our talk with Ben and Suvi, because between you and me, it's a pretty darn good one. Ben, Suvi, first off, just thank you so much for the time today. And
No problem.
congrats on the work on the show. I thought it was great.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, it was a really good one to work on. We've got to sort of dredge our memories back, because it seems like a long time ago now. But
I know. I was just trying to remember anything, and I'm like, oh, I hope
You
we
do these
should.
things, and then there's a while until they come out, and then there's a while until they garner interest and stuff. But yeah, it's gone down really well, the show, so we're very proud to be part involved with it.
No, I mean,
Mm.
I guess my first question is because I'm always curious. I mean, and especially when it comes to science fiction, because there is this sort of weight of legacy of music scores when it comes to sort of science fiction material. But like, when in the process do you guys get brought in? Like, are you in there fairly early on, or like, or is it picture lock? Okay, you've got 6 weeks to give us something. Like, how does the whole process work?
I mean, it can be that way, the picture locked and 6 weeks, but that's getting less and less common now, isn't it, Suvi?
Yeah, quite often you get asked pretty early on, which is good for us as well. That's how we like to do
Yeah,
it as well.
yeah. I think ever since my first sort of science fiction stuff was with Alex Garland, and we had a working practice where we got on board, at script stage, and even went to along to see the sets, and then you sort of feel creatively immersed in it. And I think it was, I'm trying to remember, Sue, it was more or less the same with this. We got sent the scripts for Constellation. That was what really hooked us in. And
Yeah,
a lot of the themes were done in response to the scripts, actually, weren't they?
I think so.
So
Yeah, and then we saw some really early, like an assembly cut, I think, did we?
yeah,
That was
yeah.
like really long and stuff, but that gave us the idea of how it's going to look
With
like.
Yeah, with TV series, we've done a few now together, me and Suvi, and me and Suvi and Jeff Barrow, who we all both sometimes work with. Um, we like to get together what we call a sort of bucket. We call it a
Oh yeah, it
bucket,
is the bucket. Yeah.
which is it can be specific themes, but is also a sort of sound world, and is a thing that the composers, if because whatever anyone says, there's always more than one person working on a big TV
Of course,
series.
yeah, yeah.
The model can sometimes be a head composer and assistants. We like to be more. We've worked where it's literally collaborators and they've been named. And so, if you're working with a collaborator, it's good to have this sort of bucket of sounds that you can reach into, that might just be, sounds and pads and instruments, or might be more developed ideas. And we actually can give that to the editors as well, so they can reach into that. And as much of the temp score that can be done, which is a temp score is a sort of, as it sounds, I'm sure your listeners are aware of what a temp score is by now. It's sort of quite established phrase, but it comes with the job, really. Every series or film will have a temp score on it, and as much of that temp score can be your music, the better it is for you as composers, but also for the show, I think. Would you agree with that, Suvi?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's always nice if you send something and then the editor and everyone agrees with the idea you've given, and if they start using it, sometimes they'd put it somewhere where you didn't think it would belong, and then it kind of gives you an idea as well, and it can be a lot more collaborative in that sense as well.
No, I mean, I'm curious because obviously a lot of the show is built on tension with Numi's character and just all the things that she's going through, and there's suspense, and I mean, it feels like there's these moments of knowing when not to compose. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, like when you're specifically working on music, is it scene specific or is it just emotion specific? Because I can imagine, especially on a show like this, you have to almost sort of compose stuff that works around the scene as opposed to with the scene.
I think you have to do all of those things you've just said, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
You do one thing and then the notes come in, and that'll as
yeah,
well
and
change everything.
it's a series like this is, as Suvi says, a very collaborative process, and it will be a case of going through it. That there'll be a temp score in it. Hopefully, that's bits of your music, and the editor and the music editors have sort of mapped out sort of where they might need music, and then you get involved properly, and might rearrange that, and the director might have an idea, and the showrunner might have an idea, and then Apple themselves might have an idea as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of voices, and that's something you have to get used to, of sort of filtering that and finding a way of of getting through that. But when it works, you're right. The absence of music is very powerful. The play where to put music and not have music, and I think everything we've ever started together, me and Suvi, or me and Suvi and Jeff, we've sort of said, if we can avoid wall-to-wall music, it makes the impact of the music, the specific impact you're trying to get, that much more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. We always thought like start with that, but yeah, then we kind of end up making loads and loads of stuff, but then at the end it kind of comes together, almost sometimes just in the final mix even. Sometimes we've done something and it's taken out or put somewhere else, and yeah.
No, I mean, I'm curious because obviously I can imagine you've got to throw as much as you can at the wall, and then you're going to get notes and things are going to get pared down. I mean, how do you sort of delineate between like, okay, they're right, this sucks, delete, versus, okay, this doesn't work for this, but I want to save this because maybe on the next one it will work. Like, because as creators, you're always having to sort of have stuff on the go. I can imagine it feels like you've got hundreds of pieces of music that are never going to quite be finished at any one given time.
Yeah, or we were always kind of making something. Like just today I was making just recording stuff and making instruments, so you have like stuff you can use. But yes, sometimes we'd make stuff and we already know it's not going to work here, and then yeah, it'll be useful elsewhere quite often.
But within a big series, that is the beauty of a big series in a way, is that you can come up with a theme that might not fit the specific place you came up with it for, but if it's in the world and the language of this, and you sort of become immersed in that musical language when you're doing because you're working on it for a long time, and we work very hard at creating this sort of palette of sounds and a sort of approach that fits the series, and then you might find that you do something for episode 2, and suddenly you're on episode, and it didn't work for some reason, and you're on episode 7, and you think, oh, remember that thing I did for episode, or that Suvi did over there, or if we put that yohiko phrase, which was a Finnish instrument that Suvi was playing, over those chords of Joe's theme, and we do that here, that will be an interesting, not only thematically interesting because it's two elements mixed together, it's like, recycle, reuse, and you do have to work fast. And so as you get onto the later episodes in a series, it's amazing how adept you become at magpieing from earlier episodes and reworking, and that's not only a good working practice, it hopefully gives coherence to the whole series.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I mean, I'm dying to ask because obviously, and it feels like this is true probably in the last maybe 15 or so years, that the idea of the film composer or the TV composer or the artists who compose music for the moving image has changed dramatically. It's no longer just sort of that John Williams image. It's it's people like Suvi who can lock herself up in her closet and just keep going to work and do stuff. How has the business of it all kind of evolved, especially from both your perspectives? Because I can imagine on one end, there's going to be a certain degree of freedom because, again, you can just sort of experiment and kind of do what you want, especially sort of in between jobs. But also there's that added pressure of, well, we got to get jobs and we got to do work and we have to sort of do stuff to the vision that people want so I can sell it and make money and pay the rent and the whole 9 yards.
I think we're lucky, very lucky in that, and Subi's doing lots of stuff on her own, but started out working with me and Jeff, and we had sort of built a reputation for which was incredibly lucky for doing sort of bespoke, slightly unique things. So the sort of commercial composition practice, where you might have to do an advert one week and and something completely different another, and that has become less for me and Jeff. It was when I started out, and I imagine it was for you as well, Suvi. But we're both lucky, I think, that we now work on stuff where people want an approach that we're sort of known for. And that's very good. As far as how much things have changed, I mean, I'm much older than Suvi, and I started back in the days of analog tape, and getting a film that said that didn't have any temp music on it, just had a sort of caption saying music here, and you would have to almost, not quite the John Williams way of playing, sat with Steven Spielberg playing the themes on the piano and waiting for the orchestra to realize it, but there was a much closer to that than we are now. And now, what we just touched on earlier, this idea of temp music and anyone being able to grab any bit of music or any stem from another show and place it where they want, it makes things a lot harder and a lot better at the same time. Easier, harder. It's like anything with technology, the options become more, but the end sometimes is it really working in the favor of the project? I don't know. If an editor chooses a bit of temp music that is really wrong but gets sort of stuck in the program, it's sometimes very difficult to shift and change minds about. What do you think? Things haven't changed as much for you probably, Suvi, as they.
I think from my point of view, it's almost, I kind of started to do this in the right time where things became more inclusive and everything's changed. And obviously I come from, I started making music with like laptop, so I don't have that's where basically I started. So for me it's always been quite open and kind of, there's definitely like, people are more brave in terms of having like artists make scores these days, and it's very I think it's a lot more brave in that sense,
and it's
there's more space to explore.
It's good for our collaboration as well, isn't it, Suvi? I mean, the way me and Suvi can do a series together can essentially be done just by uploading. We share the same projects. They upload to a shared drive. I can say, I've got to the end of I don't know where I'm going with this. Can you take over? Or this would really suit some of your vocal stuff. And she can say, oh well, I was imagining some piano here, and I was in charge of that element of it. And so you can literally just chop and change and swap around and send people ideas, and that is a very interesting collaborative way to work.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
I can't imagine how it's where you'd just have to use the piano and then you have the orchestra and that's it basically. But
there's no way you could do that collaborative approach in the sort of traditional Hollywood scoring. Unless they were literally posting each other bits of manuscript paper and saying, you fill in the cellos and basses, and I'll do the woodwind. I mean, it's so in that respect, the collaborative aspect of it is amazing.
Now, I'm curious: is there something more creatively engaging from both your perspectives about working sort of in this milieu as opposed to working in quote unquote a band? Because I mean, obviously you mentioned Jeff, and I mean, you guys have collaborated before, and I mean, he obviously has experience sort of being a part of a band, but it seems like he's sort of invented himself differently going forward as well. And it seems like we're getting more and more artists who are going from one to the other, or finding a little bit more, I guess, creative freedom, sort of being able to work in the film and television space to kind of do what they want with what they want, rather than trying to sort of fit the idea of a quote unquote band.
Yeah, and I think you'd obviously have to speak to Jeff, but I know that what me working with, coming from a more traditional solo composer background, and finding myself in a collaborative partnership with Jeff and now with Suvi, it has broadened my creative perspectives, and I think it is much closer to being in a band in a way than your traditional Hollywood approach, and I'm absolutely all for it. I don't think I could go back now. I spent sort of 15 years of my life, because that sort of thing that a band has, where you're able, if you're in a band with people that you trust, and me and Suvi have both been in bands, not as successful as Jeff's bands, but we both dabbled in that side of things as well. And you get the opportunity to bounce. I mean, it's simple, but it's true. You get the opportunity to bounce creative ideas off someone, and also you get a way of judging your own output, I think. So if I do something and I'm really keen on it, and then I pass it over to Subi, if I have to make a strong argument for it, it actually sort of solidifies the fact that I think this is a really strong idea. So you get to sort of know what you think works and what doesn't, and obviously you only work with people whose musical opinion you really trust, and that's what's been so great about working with Jeff, and what's been so great about working with Subi.
Yeah, and it is very collaborative, and you also collaborate with the filmmakers. So
yes,
in that
absolutely.
sense, it's like it is like a you're like a not
As
like a
they always,
band.
no matter what, it takes a village, right? No, it's absolutely true. But I mean, just to put a bow on this, and I mean, it's a silly question, but it's one I always like to ask. And Suvi, we'll start with you. But was there a piece of music that you heard sort of back in the day that made you sort of have the light bulb go off and realize, okay, maybe composing or doing music in this kind of way is an option, as opposed to, like I said, maybe the sort of the traditional what people think of, people getting into music is?
For me, I mean, I didn't really know or realize that composing is something you can do for a job for like a long time. I only realized it like later in life, but I've always, like I grew up with like Disney and films like Fantasia. I just remember as a kid just rewinding the tape and watching certain things so many times. And I remember there are a few pieces like, do you remember Turnabog in Fantasia? That like devil is like a weird Russian composer, and the music was just so. I just remember like watching it over and over again, being terrified and like amazed. But at that point, I didn't even really think that like, oh wow, someone's actually made it. But that I think that like that has affected me. And then I think when I came to Bristol, that's when I kind of I just started making music for like student films, and then I kind of realized, this is something people do. Like, wow, like I'd love to do this, really. And I think then, I was introduced to Ben and Jeff, and like through there it was just quite naturally gravitated towards that.
How about you, Ben?
It was so many things. I mean, as a piece of music, I do distinctly remember listening to "Day in the Life" by the Beatles, which my parents played, and just being sort of jaw on the floor, especially about the intersecting the orchestral riser.
No, totally, yeah.
And I absolutely loved that song as a kid, and wanted to work out, always wanted to understand. I played the piano from quite an early age, and I always wanted to understand how it worked and why it worked, and pick it apart and try and work out what the chords were and stuff like that. But then as far as film music, I mean, there's so many. So we've all had from my generation, we all had almost the same responses to Star Wars and John Williams and things like that, and the power of really good music and the moving image. And then also the gateway into more obscure music and slightly left field music seemed to come from film for me. Watching Risky Business, Tangerine Dream, which led me to find Steve Reich and watching films like that, and scores to horror films, and that really was. There's a way that film music, even if you were used to listening to just the charts on the radio, and then you watch a film, and you hear this most out there music in a sort of very commercial setting. And if you were like I was as a kid, I wanted to know what that music was and where it was coming from and what else it sounded like. So yeah, you listen to Tangerine Dream and you read somewhere in a music magazine that they were influenced by Steve Reich, and then you find out about him, and you're sort of down a wormhole, a good wormhole, and that I hope that continues with people today. I think that it's a really interesting time for sort of film music and people composing music that's slightly less standard, and that's great.
Well, I think you're both adding to that and then some. And I love that you brought up Risky Business, because you're right, that the music in that movie, it never gets enough credit that it deserves. But
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, both of you just honestly keep up the good work. And I mean, and
Thank
congrats
you.
on the show. And obviously, again, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciated this.
That's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.